flourish and succeed. It should be a place that helps an enterprise to grow, where an enterprise can realize its unlimited potential with talented human resources, where the success of a business is guaranteed. It is the Chungbuk Free Economic Zone.
Coming up on Arirang News. South Korea has been elected as a non-permanent member of the United Nations Security Council, regaining the seat for the first time in 11 years. By winning a 2-year term, the country is expected to play a greater role in addressing global security challenges amid North Korea's escalating threats. The Yoon Sukhyun administration has today unveiled its new national security strategy, outlining the country's policies on North Korea, diplomacy, and national defense and interests, with the aim of expanding its global presence. The Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development slashes its growth outlook for South Korea this year amid weak private investment and sluggish exports. This while the OECD revises its projected growth for the global economy upward. Good evening. It's 9 p.m. here in Seoul. Thank you for joining us on Arirang News. We start with news of South Korea regaining its seat in the United Nations Security Council for the first time in 11 years. The country was elected as a non-permanent member for a 2-year term that begins next January. The news is welcomed by many here in Korea amid heightening tension on the peninsula. Our foreign affairs correspondent Choi Min-jung leads us off.
Republic of Korea, 180.
180 votes out of a total of 192. South Korea on Tuesday earned more than 2/3 of the vote needed to become a non-permanent member of the UN Security Council. The 2-year term set to begin next year marks the country's return to the Security Council after 11 years. It also marks the country's 3rd time to take a seat on the council. President Yoon Sukhyun touted South Korea's election win, saying that the country's entry to the UNSC is a victory of global diplomacy. Foreign Minister Park Jin also tweeted that South Korea will spare no effort in promoting freedom, peace, and prosperity across the world. In a briefing on Wednesday, the Foreign Ministry said South Korea's entry is expected to serve as an opportunity to establish itself as a global pivotal state that contributes to the peace, security, and prosperity of the international community. And among key items on the agenda is dealing with issues related to North Korea.
As we're directly involved in issues on the Korean Peninsula, we will actively contribute to making efforts to respond to North Korea's threat on nuclear development at the Security Council.
South Korea's ambassador to the UN, Hwang Jun-guk, also pledged to expand South Korea's role as a global pivotal state by tackling North Korea-related issues.
We are ready to deal with other significant regional and thematic Security Council issues, including counterterrorism and the long-standing DPRK issues, post-nuclear and human rights situation.
On top of this, South Korea plans to lead discussions on cybersecurity, women's peace and security, as well as climate. It will also establish a UNSC task force within the Foreign Ministry to better prepare itself for a successful 3rd term. Choi Min-jung, Arirang News.
The UN Security Council deals with core issues related to security around the world. We take a look at what it means for South Korea to obtain a seat on this body at a time when threats are increasing from the north. Our foreign affairs correspondent Bae Eun-ji has more on the experts' take on the significance.
As a non-permanent member of the UN Security Council for 2 years beginning in 2024, South Korea will be able to better address North Korea-related issues. It will now be involved directly in discussions and debates regarding statements and resolutions passed by the Security Council, which has the primary responsibility to maintain international peace and security. Speaking to Arirang News, an expert said South Korea's role as a non-permanent UNSC member is symbolic, as it shows the country's position as a legitimate world leader, and that it will be able to express its desires to the international community, especially on matters that the country has a great interest in, such as human rights and nuclear proliferation.
So South Korea's membership on the committee, on the council, is significant insofar as it now participates directly in voting on resolutions that are binding on all member states.
The UN Security Council is comprised of 5 permanent member states and 10 non-permanent members. As a member of the Council, South Korea will also be able to strengthen trilateral cooperation with the US, a permanent member, and Japan, a member of the Council for the 2023 to 2024 term. This is the first time since 1997 that the 3 countries have taken seats at the UN Security Council together. As North Korea has recently ramped up the development of its nuclear missile programs, the 3 countries have been working together to better respond to those threats. However, there are still challenges left in order to implement strong measures against North Korea, as the UN Security Council cannot make a decision if there's a veto from one of the 5 permanent members, which includes China and Russia, with both countries unlikely to change their position on Pyongyang. Another expert explained it's unlikely that there will be any major improvements in terms of taking stronger action against North Korea, but expressed hopes, saying that South Korea will be able to show that it supports anti-authoritarian regimes and take part in newly emerging security issues.
Now, South Korea is at the best position to initiate and institutionalize at UN level our value originating from our successful experiences of economic growth, political development, innovative and transparent market system, and science and technology or something.
Pyeongtaek, Arirang News.
Outlined today was the nation's new national security strategy under President Yoon. As the top office says, it'll serve as a compass for the country's policies on North Korea, diplomacy, and national defense. Our presidential correspondent, Oh Soo-young, brings us the highlights.
The Yoon Sukhyun administration released its national security strategy on Wednesday, saying it pursues practical and cooperative diplomacy to enhance South Korea's national interest and standing in the world.
Our 3 main national security goals are, first, to protect national sovereignty and territory and to promote public safety. Second, while establishing peace on the Korean peninsula, prepare for unification in the future. Third, lay the basis for prosperity in East Asia and expand Seoul's global role.
First, Seoul plans to maintain its audacious initiative policy that offers economic incentives to Pyongyang upon concrete actions towards denuclearization, leaving the door open to engagement, whilst bolstering its 3-axis deterrence strategy against North Korea's missile and nuclear threat. The strategy highlights the South's alliance with the United States, bolstered by the recent Washington declaration that established the Joint Nuclear Consultative Group. A senior Yoon official said the group would be formed within the year, with a potential first meeting during the summer, and that the Allies and Tokyo are working to complete a trilateral missile warning system. With the US and Japan highlighted as the country's essential partners in both national and economic security based on shared liberal democratic values, the strategy adopts confident diplomacy towards Beijing regarding sensitive security issues while aiming for a healthier and more mature relationship based on mutual respect and reciprocity. On Russia, Seoul will continue efforts to end the war in Ukraine along with sanctions on the Kremlin. Still, it seeks stable relations with Moscow.
Citing concern about the geopolitical rifts between the major powers, as well as trade uncertainties, Seoul looks to overcome its greatest security and economic challenges through a global comprehensive approach of collaborating more with other middle powers.
Building on the Indo-Pacific strategy released in December, the National Security Strategy lays out more detailed steps to cooperate with the Association of Southeast Asian Nations and the European Union to maintain stability in supply chains and regional security and tackle emerging challenges such as climate change and cyber attacks based on the rule of law and freedom. To establish itself as a global pivotal state, South Korea will strive to actively expand its roles in global governance and its development assistance in proportion to its international standing. Oh Soo-young, Arirang News.
South Korea has sternly protested to China and Russia over their military planes entering the country's Air Identification Defense Zone, KADIZ, on Tuesday without prior notice. The Defense Ministry on Wednesday said that it launched a complaint to China and Russia's military attaches in South Korea and expressed regret after their aircraft entered areas close to South Korean airspace. The ministry also urged the countries to take appropriate measures to prevent a recurrence, underlining that this could cause tensions in the region. On Tuesday, Chinese and Russian warplanes flew across the KADIZ without prior notice as part of their joint air patrol. Although it did not violate South Korea's territorial air, it prompted South Korea to scramble fighter jets. South Korea and Poland have agreed to boost cooperation in the defense sector. The agreement was made on Wednesday between the nation's defense minister Lee Jong-sub and his Polish counterpart Mariusz Błaszczak. They put pen to paper on a memorandum of understanding to establish a joint ministerial committee on bilateral defense and arms industry cooperation. The two also agreed to deepen cooperation with mutual visits by their troops that operate the same weapons system. In a symbolic display of the two countries' growing cooperation, a rollout ceremony was held in Sacheon for the first FA-50 GFs. South Korea plans to supply 12 of the light combat aircraft from August until the end of this year as part of a $3 billion 48-unit deal. The two ministers also took time to attend the largest ever South Korea-U.S. combined joint live-fire exercise aimed at bolstering deterrence against growing military threats from North Korea. The Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development slashes its growth outlook for South Korea this year amid weak private investment and sluggish exports. This while the OECD revises its projected growth for the global economy upward. Our Moon Hae-ryun with the latest forecast figures.
South Korea's growth outlook for the year has been set lower than the overall global forecast, despite expectations that economic conditions will improve alongside a recovery in China. A report released by the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development on Wednesday forecast global growth for the year ahead at 2.7%, and South Korea's growth rate at 1.5%. This is more than 1 percentage point lower than the country's growth seen last year at 2.6% and lower than an earlier forecast in March. The organization attributed its pessimistic outlook to high interest rates and a sluggish housing market, posing burdens on private consumption and investment. It also recommended the support of vulnerable groups here to enhance fiscal soundness in response to the country's aging population, such as training for the unemployed and improving women's participation in economic activities. As for the rest of the world, the OECD expects to see fragile growth this year, amid slowing inflation from falling energy prices and a rebound in consumer and business sentiment. The reopening of China's borders was also evaluated as having a positive impact on the global economy, with that country's predicted growth this year set at 5.4%. However, the Eurozone was predicted to grow at 0.9%, hindered by the ongoing war in Ukraine and high energy prices, Russia being one of only 2 OECD countries expected to experience a decline rather than growth for the year ahead. On the same day, the World Bank raised its global growth forecast from 1.7% to 2.1%. The bank also cut its global growth prediction for 2024 to 2.4% from the 2.7% made in January, citing the ongoing effects of monetary policy, which has seen business investment reduced. It also raised concerns over the possibility of a further economic slowdown caused by stress in the banking sector. By region, the World Bank shared similar views with the OECD in that China was predicted to show rapid growth this year, unlike the Eurozone. Meanwhile, on the back of the revised outlook, U.S. stocks closed higher on Tuesday. The Dow Jones Industrial Average rose 0.03%, while the tech-heavy Nasdaq gained 0.36%. Moon Hae-ryun, Arirang News.
The nation's major umbrella labor union has today announced that it'll stop participating in the president-led Economic, Social, and Labor Council for the first time in more than 7 years. Our Lee Hae-yeon tells us what's behind all that and what it means for the relationship between the labor union and the government.
One of South Korea's 2 major labor umbrella groups, the Federation of Korean Trade Unions, has decided to suspend its participation in the trilateral consultative body between labor management and the government. The decision was made for the first time in more than 7 years, meaning that the Economic, Social, and Labor Council will lack power as a communication channel between the labor union and the government. Around 50 union members sat down in a meeting on Wednesday, which took around an hour. Afterward, the chairman of the FKTU, Kim Dong-myung, said that the union's decision is powerful and basically means that the FKTU has pulled out from the Economic, Social, and Labor Council. He also said that it's more important for the union members to sort the issue out together. FKTU will not be leaving the council at this point, but the union said it can decide to completely withdraw from the council at any time. A result of Wednesday's discussion will be announced Thursday morning in a press conference at the Yongsan presidential office. This comes as President Yoon Sukhyun a few weeks ago ordered a police crackdown on labor sit-ins. Late last month, an executive of the Federation of Korean Metal Workers Trade Unions was injured by police during a sit-in protest on top of a 7-meter-high steel structure, which the FKTU called an excessive use of force. The council was scheduled to hold the first governmental meeting with representatives of labor and management last Thursday, but was canceled due to the FKTU's absence. The Yoon administration and the umbrella labor union have been at odds following the government's labor reform policies, such as sluggish adjustments to the working hours and wage system, and the administration's plans to increase accounting transparency of labor unions. Lee Dae-hyun, Arirang News.
South Korea has decided to crack down on major firms stealing the technology of startups by increasing punitive measures. After discussions with the Ministry of SMEs and Startups, the police and the Korea Intellectual Property Office chief policymaker of the People Power Party, Park Dae-chul, told reporters on Wednesday that the ruling party and the government will push to boost the amount of compensation perpetrators must pay to a maximum of 5 times the damages incurred. He added that the country will set up a one-stop gateway platform for startups to troubleshoot relevant issues with the help of various ministries. Also present at today's meeting at the National Assembly were the heads of several startups who shared their personal experiences of technical and contractual conflicts with South Korean conglomerates. President Yoon has reasserted his commitment to balanced development across the nation as he broke ground on a high-speed double-track railroad project in the city of Cheongju in Chungcheongbuk-do province. At the groundbreaking ceremony on Wednesday, the president said the launch of the double-track line across the country's mid-regions from Pyeongtaek-Osong station will make all rail connections more accessible with more high-speed trains in operation. Reiterating his electoral pledge to establish a rail connection between Daejeon, Sejong, and other provincial cities, Yoon added that he would foster the Chungcheongbuk-do region as a national railway cluster and turn its existing biotech cluster into a hub of advanced technologies. The new Overseas Koreans Agency officially launched earlier this week, aiming to provide more support and protection for some 7.5 million Koreans living abroad. Our Lee Si-hoo took a visit to its office and got a chance to speak with the overseas Koreans themselves.
To support the more than 7.5 million South Koreans living abroad, the Overseas Koreans Agency opened its doors on Monday.
앞으로 재외동포청은 재외동포들을 보호하고 지원하는 것은 물론 재외동포와 모국 간 교류, 협력을 촉진하는 연결고리와 역할을 수행할 것입니다.
The 151-person agency, with its headquarters in Incheon and a branch office in Gwanghwamun in central Seoul, oversees policies regarding South Koreans living overseas. The office in Gwanghwamun provides administrative support in many areas of overseas Koreans' lives. This support center in Gwanghwamun provides a one-stop service for many issues that affect overseas Koreans, such as nationality, immigration, and military service. Whereas before, overseas Koreans had to visit different agencies for different services, they can now receive a comprehensive service at the office, conveniently located close to many embassies.
My daughter is an American citizen, so she might apply to recover her Korean citizenship again. And being close to the US Embassy and the Foreign Ministry makes it much more convenient.
My wife is Korean, my kids as well, they were born here. So, I mean, this is helpful for us because it's easier to get things done.
The launch of the agency was one of President Yoon Sukhyun's election pledges and later a national task. Its establishment was made possible through the revision of the Government Organization Act that specified the launch of the agency under the umbrella of the Foreign Ministry. The revision passed the National Assembly and the Cabinet in late February.
I declare the passing of the partial revision of the Government Organisation Act with 266 approvals and 6 abstentions from the 272 present.
Overseas Koreans themselves welcome the change.
Now that it's beginning, I hope that practical, not-for-show policies and administration will take place with the well-being of more than 7.5 million overseas Koreans in mind.
At the same time, they further underlined the need for better channels of communication between the home country and the Korean communities overseas.
I've been thinking it'd be nice for South Korea to refer to the voices, thoughts, and wisdom of overseas Koreans.
Meanwhile, the head of the agency, Lee Ki-cheol, vowed to listen to their many voices and offer practical help. Lee Si-hu, Arirang News.
Over now to Haiti, where a magnitude 4.9 earthquake hit the Caribbean country early Tuesday, killing at least 4 people. The catastrophe followed deadly floods that took dozens of lives over the weekend, further challenging search and rescue operations. Kim Jung-sil has more on the plight of the people there.
An earthquake on Tuesday has caused buildings to collapse and devastated the city of Jeremy. Another natural disaster only days after massive floods took dozens of lives. Torrential rain that fell from Friday till Sunday caused floods and landslides across Haiti. The floods killed at least 51 people and injured 140. The local government says 18 are still missing. The footage of people picking up clothing that has been washed away by the flood shows just how much rain poured in the area. This mother lost a child.
I lost a 5-year-old child. I risked losing 2, but God left the other one hanging in a tree. I saved one, but I lost one anyway.
Authorities say more than 30,000 houses have been flooded. The United Nations Secretary General spokesperson Stephen Dujarric told reporters on Tuesday that the Secretary General extended his condolences to the families of the victims and said the UN is ready to help Haiti.
The UN stands ready to work with the Haitian authorities and other partners to help ease the suffering of those in need as it relates to the earthquake and, of course, the other natural disaster, which is the flooding.
But he added that the ongoing insecurity and damage to roads are hampering any relief efforts. Rescue operations are also hindered by Haiti's ongoing problem with criminal gangs that are in control of many areas. Kim Jung-sil, Arirang News.
Temperatures in Seoul tomorrow will be in the similar range as today. But starting from the daytime, light showers are expected for central parts of the country. Although maximum temperatures will be a tad lower than today, high moisture levels in the air, conditions may feel stuffy and hot. Showers will start tomorrow afternoon. As for the amount of rainfall, northern Gyeonggi-do and Gangwon-do provinces will see 10 to 40 millimeters. And other regions, including the Seoul metropolitan area and the surrounding areas, will see 5 to 20. This round of showers will last until Friday morning. Central parts of the country will see heavy layers of fog building up for the morning hours. Visibility may drop significantly, so please drive with extra caution. For southern regions where conditions will be dry and warm, UV radiation will be intense. For tomorrow, Seoul and Gwangju will be starting off at 18 degrees. Highs in Seoul and Chuncheon will get up to 26, Daejeon 30, Busan will be breezy at 25 degrees. After this round of showers, central regions will see scattered outbreaks of rain. That's all for now, and to the weather conditions around the world.
That is all for this Wednesday night newscast. Thank you for watching. We'll be back with the most up-to-date news tomorrow. Have a good night.
Global leader of eco-friendly future materials. Green tomorrow with POSCO.
In what sort of environments do new enterprises typically flourish and succeed? It should be a place that helps an enterprise to grow, where an